People love to talk about how the Nagas are classless, casteless, but we have class among us. You can see it in the aesthetic, you can see in the lifestyle, you can see in the food that you eat, even in the texture of your skin. Now they want to attract students through fairs and clubs. So it's not the quality of education that matters. So now, in order to get more students coming to your college, you'll have to advertise that you have this fest, this club. And those are their only attractions because the students are not interested in education anymore. There are also officers that we have gone to and they'll show us this face. Which group has come again? Kontu group itu. One officer specifically mentioned that don't bring these petty things to us. These are not petty things, but it's considered petty to them.
What about the phrase that change starts in the family?
I think the same thing is happening in the family. Very few families now have control over their kids that demand in, say, new gadgets or the demand for anything that they want to, whether it's for further studies or whether it's the place that they want to study. I think there is also, a challenge to the authority, even at home, even in the family. We have shifted from that traditional way of handling a family to, when you say modern, we're trying to be more Americanized. You want to let your children decide what to do. You want to be that cool parent. So I think in the process of trying to be a cool parent, we're also losing that need to be the authoritative figure to your children. Particularly in the Naga context, I think that whether it's school or family or any institution, you have to be a little dictatorial. If you're looking at, say, China, maybe you can relax. People have worked so hard. They've learned discipline and hard work. But for a society like the Naga society, there needs to be a little more authoritative, a little more dictatorial forms of control, whether it's in the family or in the institution.
Is that because we're more rebellious to begin with? Like we're more outspoken as a society?
I don't know if I would say we're rebellious. Not necessarily rebellious, but we love freedom a little too much. We don't know how to handle freedom. You have to reach a certain level of, say, a developed state of mind in order to make proper use of freedom. And I think we have not reached that level where we can balance freedom. We have learned to use things a little more loosely. So I think the exposure to, say, the Western life or modernization without having developed fully as a society, somehow we have taken in all the, say, the material culture without developing the values, So they're not just children, but even parents are influenced by whatever is going on, globally, say, social media. We're all now part of it, the internet. So somehow I think that has influenced our way of dealing with the family or with students.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of see that. I remember I was in Konama last year for Hornbill, and we were like deep in the village side. And I saw a girl with her smartphone, and she had placed it on like a stone. I was wondering, like, what are you doing? And it turns out she was doing Instagram Reels. I'm like, oh my goodness, like the roads haven't even been finished, but you're out here dancing on Instagram Reels. So there is sort of that disconnect between, where you are and where you want to be and what you're looking at. On the screen, which is one of the things that you talk about. I think you talk about restaurant, cafe, and sort of the changing nature of the modern youths hand in hand with globalization. Can you go more in depth with that?
Yeah. So the change in the food habits, the lifestyle, these are there. I'm focusing on whether you are able to afford that lifestyle or not, because it is something trendy. You're trying to adapt to it, So you have had certain students who would say, I don't know if I am worth entering this restaurant. They have this, some kind of insecurity when they enter a restaurant or a cafe. Then there will be some others who will think that it's really cool to be part of this cafe culture. Then there are also institutions or religious, institutions that would sort of, entice the youth by making it like this is something happening, It could be a drink, it could be a cafe. You're trying to show that this is the happening thing and you should be part of it,
I'll give you an example right now. iPhones. That seemed to have taken off to be a symbol of prestige now, which is so crazy to me. I think when I came here, someone told me that. I'm like, really? An iPhone? Like that's your symbol? But that's what they gravitate towards. That's just a trend. That's just a phase.
Yeah, that's what it is. So you also have to look at the fact whether you will be able to afford, a gadget or not, or you'll be able to afford a lifestyle or not. People still go for it. And then you were talking about the Instagram reels, so you'll have kids who are pro at making reels and being on social media, but they don't know how to use, say, the Microsoft Word, typing, all this, no? So we have left the basic, we have jumped from one thing to another. So it sort of causes a social problem. It's what in sociology W.F. Ogburn calls the cultural lag. So we have already, the material things have reached us, but we're lagging behind when it comes to values, ideas. We have not fully developed, but somehow the material culture has reached us very quickly. So this is a problem for all of us.
Do you think the reason that the youths who are making these Instagram reels and the fact that they've skipped using Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, do you think it's because Microsoft themselves are starting to become outdated in their eyes? Because in their eyes, they're like, hold on a second. I have ChatGPT, I have Google. You can do everything that Microsoft can. It seems like Microsoft is obsolete.
I don't know if it's about being obsolete. When you talk about Facebook, yeah, it's become obsolete, okay? But then for Microsoft Word, when you have to do an assignment, like you're still using it, when you have to do a presentation. Recently, there was also a research that showed how the use of ChatGPT had put students at a disadvantage. So you see, I think it's more about shortcuts, wanting to go ahead with the shortcuts rather than seeing Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint presentation as obsolete. If you're letting something do everything for you, then and you stop using your brain, your hands, then something's going to happen to you.
Well, I've noticed that with myself. Even just to do basic math, like if I need 2 tablespoons of powder to make 1 cup of coffee, how much would I need to make 10 cups of coffee? Back then, you should have just done this in your head, but I'm so lazy to do it, and I have to ask ChatGPT now.
Yeah.
It reminds me, have you watched the movie WALL-E?
No, I haven't.
Disney?
Sorry. No.
Well, it's just about a futuristic world where humans have become so dependent on technology and robots and AI that they've become so fat to the point that they can't even move. They're bound to their chair and AI does everything for them. So it's scary.
Yeah,
it's scary.
It is.
Well, you also talk about food habits, which is one of the things that I observed here. And I'm guilty of it myself. When you have a plate, circularly, I think like 80% of it would be covered by like a mountain of rice, 2% like veggies, and then like, of course, our classic pork fat and meat.
Yeah.
So when you say food habits, what are you specifically talking about?
The fact that we have like this huge amount of rice, there was a time when, of course, our ancestors also had, but there was more physical work. Now we don't do that much physical work. For a society like the Naga society, we don't produce anything. We don't have industries. But then somehow we have all these big brands coming in, and we have somehow glamorized the idea, whether it's a cake, whether it's a burger, whether it's pizza, we have learned to glamorize those food items. So in that process, when you glamorize that, the masses tend to catch up with that. Let me call this an elitist culture. They will glamorize it, and people have moved on. Say the upper class, they are aware of the health hazards, so they are now more careful with their food habits. But now the food item or a culture that has been glamorized, now it has passed on to the masses. They catch up with this culture without knowing the negative effects or the side effects. It's not when it is in among them that it's passed on to the masses. So somehow it becomes diluted as it reaches the masses. A lifestyle that has been glamorized by someone up there.
What does our future look like right now if we're going on the path that we're going towards? Obesity, obviously, that'd be number one.
Yeah, obesity. At the same time, I saw a picture on Pinterest, I think, but I have not been able to find that again. But there's a picture that shows, it's a very gloomy picture where you see the tribals. Now they're ordering food from their phones while their houses are shabby. But the presence of all these big brands somehow have already, polluted your mind. So despite living a very shabby life, you want to believe that you are on par with the people on the, say, developed world, So that's the picture I see when I think of all this, and no one can stop it because people who want to invest, they're investing, they've brought it. And somehow it is very easy to glamorize this lifestyle.
And I think because it also advertises to a very human nature of selfishness and greed and wanting that lifestyle. When you know that you can't achieve a BMW, when you know that you can't achieve the lifestyle of like a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk, you want to surround yourself with the material possessions that represent that lifestyle. One of the things that I was told was that, okay, we need to go back to our grassroots and have a deep appreciation from where we started. Because it wasn't long ago that we were still living in the woods.
Yeah.
But digitalization has accelerated our growth to now 50 years. Even the shopkeepers have iPhones. To me, sometimes it feels hopeless. To me, sometimes it just feels like a never-ending train that's just never going to stop. And we're always lagging behind.
The thing is, if we can glamorize a simpler lifestyle. Now, what is happening at the upper echelons is that they have moved past that bronze era. The elites are now capitalizing on indigeneity, whether it's food or clothes. So by now, their kids have already learned English very well. They have all the basic facilities that they need. Now, what is happening is the masses are just catching up. So the kids are still maybe they lack in terms of vocabulary range, sentence formation, speaking English, expressing themselves in English. So by now, say, when indigeneity is imposed again, they are now struggling in between trying to grapple with English and at the same time the indigeneity that has been now glamorized. So people at the upper echelons, they will move fast. But whatever they glamorize, whatever they say is important or good in a particular society, that will be the popular thing. That will be the important thing, and then the masses will follow. Because of the gap between the rich and the poor, the people at the upper echelons and the lower ranks, this lack continues to remain, So the ideal thing would be that the elites at the upper echelons stop for a while, look at it, and maybe try to glamorize something that would be relevant for the whole society. Yeah.
But is that too much to ask in a sense that like they're just so, I just have this idea of the upper class that they're so self-absorbed with their own image and they know that the classes below them will follow whatever they're doing. So I think they get this sort of self-gratification when they tell the masses, hey, invest in this Gucci bag that they know holds no value.
Yeah.
But they know that just by saying that, the masses will just run to the store and just start buying it. To me, it seems it's a bit too hopeful for them to change anything.
It depends on the individual. You also find people who might want to change the society, who wants to, but maybe they are unaware of the lag or, the problems, given the fact that you are from different spaces. It's difficult to understand, the problems of people at different sections when you are worlds apart. So maybe some people, there would be individuals who are willing to, but like we are saying, it's not what you say, but it's who says what,
Right.
Yeah.
What have you observed in terms of classes here in Nagaland?
I don't know if people agree with me, but there's a wide disparity now, People love to talk about how the Nagas are classless, casteless, but we have class among us, and the disparity is just getting wider and wider. You can see it in the aesthetics, you can see in the lifestyle, you can see in the food that you eat, you can see even in the texture of your skin. It's becoming more apparent, yes.
You can tell by a person's class by the texture of their skin?
Yeah, we're becoming like, that's what my colleagues and I or my friends, we talk about how you're able to buy a good skin, if you have money, So we're getting there. And even in terms of, say, education, people who make it, we're not questioning people who make it to the competitive exams, but now you have, you can afford the best coaching classes if you have money, you can afford for the best tutor. So if you want to top the class, or say people at the lower ranks or someone from a rural boy from the village will have to go to the fields, come back, help the parents study, will not be able to afford for a private tuition. So it also affects the performance. There's already a wide disparity even in terms of your performance in education, what you can afford, what is accessible to you. All these are obvious symbols of class disparity. But at the same time, when you talk about a status, it is also achieved through, say, a government job, a high-ranking or government job, whether it's a farmer or a minister's son, you can compete through the competitive exam and somehow that status is maintained. You may come from a very elitist family, but then that elite status ends when you are unable to retain that status through the government jobs, So that is also there. But again, the disparity also comes in terms of this wealth. You may not be a high-ranking officer, but you have a huge amount of wealth to buy, say, education or any other thing that is available.
Right. Isn't that suspicious though? That even if you're like an officer, you don't really earn much. You are a servant to the government. But if you have lots of land, you're building up buildings.
Yeah.
That is a sign of corruption.
You can say that, but I don't know how to comment on that, unless you have generational wealth.
Right.
Yeah.
But how often are people who have generational wealth, do they go into civil service?
That's something I also want to look into, to know how many people would make it. not just the socio-economic factors that determine what kind of education you get, your social networks. It also what we call the cultural symbol, the range of vocabularies that you have got from your parents, the explanation of the concepts or the symbols, the gadgets or the things that are around you that you have grown up with, the way you present yourself, the confidence that you have with the system, and also, say, the panel of judges that would be whose judgment would be in line with the way you present yourself, apart from the competency, your educational qualification. Basing on, say, the HSLC exam, which I undertook during my thesis, I studied certain categories of school, and then I did a background check of this 5 types of school. And when you look at this higher performing schools, they would have a better background. The background didn't matter when it comes to performance. And there are certain schools where they accommodate all the students who have failed the exam, repeaters, sort of. So when you check their background, they usually come from backgrounds that are not doing so well. It's very obvious that the private schools are doing better, but then the private schools are concentrated in Kohima and Dimapur.
Right.
And of course, there are also private schools in other districts, but they are lesser. I also asked some of them why there are less private schools, like the proprietors. And of course, if you cannot make money, then why put up a school there? Places like Mogokchung and Pek, the government schools are doing well. But other districts, the government schools, they have, even the enrollment rate is very low in comparison to the private schools. So when you look at the educational situation in Nagaland, there's not just inequality, there's inequality within inequality. Rural urban gap, then private and public schools. But again, the idea of private schools that we have here is very different from the private schools that we have in other, say, developed societies.
Oh, for sure. Right.
So in the name of private schools, you're, say, charging more fees, but what about the quality of education? So that way, I try to link it with, say, people who have pursued higher studies in the universities, central universities, So many of them, they're the products of private schools that is there. 1 or 2% from the government schools, But they have mentioned about 40% of them have talked about how they have struggled to come on par with their counterparts from other regions across the country. So there we also have to question the quality of education that is being provided by the private schools. Instead of going to a government school, why should I send my kid to the government school? You usually send your babysitter to the government school. That's what you do, no? So there's this idea that private schools are better. But the question is, are they really better? Because if it's not helping you to, adapt yourself in a university, then there's something to be questioned about the quality of education that's being imparted in the name of being a better, education giver. You're so much behind people, particularly in terms of articulating, written maybe slightly better, but people are making their own notes. You have to find your readings. Then the problem with articulating yourself, clarity of concepts, all these are things that not just me, but a lot of Nagas and Northeasterns have grappled with. And unless you go and see other people who are doing better than you, you'll never know that you're bad. Right. Yeah, there's a need for, I think, our kids here to know where they stand in terms of education, because you have this idea that you're a graduate now, but you end up knowing nothing, Yeah.
Well, that was one of the big challenges that Kiwisato used to talk about of Naga Ed. And he talks about how when they were hiring interns who were graduates, that they didn't even know the basic Microsoft Word, the office work, and he was really frustrated. They would have like 2-3 week workshops just to get them in. And this is the kind of stuff that you do when you go to developed countries. This is stuff that you learn by the time you've passed high school.
Yes. What happens is also they've also lost values, They just do internship for the sake of a certificate. They don't want to learn, So it's like something that is being imposed, So we cannot blame the kids entirely. It's something wrong with our system. Before learning how to articulate, how to internalize the concepts, we have jumped to, say, a new system of education. Now all they have to do is like finish the course, the teachers, the students, they have to rush to finish the syllabus. Then we have this large number of students. It's impossible to, get like one-to-one identify whether they have been able to internalize or, say, are able to articulate, if they have the clarity of concept. And I think it's also to do with the commercialization of education. Now they want to attract students through fairs and clubs. So it's not the quality of education that matters. So now, in order to get, say, more students coming to your college, you'll have to advertise, that you have this fest, this club, So, and those are their only attractions because the students are not interested in education anymore, So this is something that frustrates you as a teacher before you learn to articulate the concepts that you have studied or write, or use Microsoft Word. Now you are having concerts, you are part of this club, that club, which is not going to help you in the future. So you have the church will do it, the youth group will do it, the students union will do it. This is what I faced. I had a roommate from UP. She was teaching in DU, okay? So we had a very good relationship. We still have a very good relationship. She's like an older sister to me. But when she wants to get back at me, she would say, in my class, I have these Northeastern girls, they're very good at fashion. They're very good at dancing fashion, but there's nothing in their head. That's what they would say. And I would get really mad, but I did not have anything to counter her. Because it's a stereotype, but stereotypes don't come from thin air. Stereotypes are there for you to break. So we have proven ourselves, proved to be that stereotype over and over again. And just a year back, I had one intellectual, I will not mention his name. This intellectual was invited to an event that I'd organized, and he stood across this undergraduates, and he stood there, and he asked them, when you go to the mainland people think that we are only good in music and fashion. Do you think that's right? And the crowd goes, yes. That's exactly what I'm saying, We have an overdose of music and fashion, and we think that if we're good at it, people will respect you. Of course, I'm not saying that you should not hone these talents that you have, but we're lagging so much behind in terms of education, quality of academics, and that's where you need to push the kids up. And then, but it's only becoming worse because of the commercialization of education. I'm sorry if the psychologist watches me, but then I was very angry when I saw this advertisement. We have kids who are addicted to video games, and then they advertise. There's an open competition for all colleges to come and compete in that video game. Okay, video game is the word that I use because I'm not very good with all this, and so they have cash reward for all of this. So you're inviting that as part of an educational institution. You're inviting students to take part in something that they're already addicted to. We have to stop doing that.
Well, and some of these colleges and universities have so much money. I remember going last year to a specific festival and the amount of money that the department had allocated just to bring these artists in was insane. They were paying them full amounts.
Exactly.
It's great to want to go for that, but you have to understand the probabilities. Very few people can achieve that kind of, very few people can be a moko.
Yes, exactly. We don't have an industry, to support that. Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons why, and this is what I wanted to ask you, why the movement has shifted towards the art and culture, towards the entertainment sector, is because I think a lot of Nagas, especially the young ones, they feel so disenfranchised, disillusioned by the fact that, I'm never going to make it in the civil service. I'm never going to crack the exams. I probably have more chances of becoming an influencer and making money off sponsoring products.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't take that compassionate approach. That's a very compassionate approach that you have, but even if not an influencer or a vlogger, you could have, taken up other jobs. There are so many other private jobs, a teacher, and we don't want to get into this manual labor. So there are also those options, but all this, say, vlogger, being an artist, these are more glamorous vocations, So maybe I'm not being able to empathize with the young minds, but I would say it's laziness. We're all very lazy, I myself included. I wouldn't see them as feeling, frustrated or thinking that, feeling hopeless and entering into this. It's more like it's a more glamorous role, so I want to pursue this. Whereas we have all the other options there, but many people will not go into the manual jobs, not a maid, not even a teacher. They can even look down on a teacher. Art and culture, being an artist, music and fashion, these have become, say, the opium of the Naga masses.
And one of the things that I wanted to mention regarding that is one of the disparities of how we look at education, how we look at the lifestyle and the career, is that constant feeling of, the system is against us. Why should we try? At the end of the day, even if I crack the civil service, some guy who has better connections to the government is probably going to get the job better than I ever could. And this is something that you have deep experience in fact, quite recently.
Yeah, so yeah, that's there. Now, it's quite obvious, like people who give exams, they talk about how now everyone has a degree, everyone has made through the written exam. So there's a competition, even in terms of recommendation, you know? Not everyone who goes with recommendation also gets it. Now, your recommendation has to have a higher weightage. You know, that's what you hear. That's a rumor, but you hear. Then, in the context of the Naga society, corruption, it's very complex. You know, one would also see it as, say, a necessary evil, where someone without connections, or say someone from the lower rungs of the society, he would never have made it to the exams, but through corruption, he has got it, you know, as part of the vote bank. Maybe a minister got him through. So there are various angles to look at corruption. And the fact that we moved directly from an agrarian society to this globalized without going through the process of, say, industrialization, etc. And the westernization or the modernization that was given to us was just handed down. We were not able to internalize it. So I think even the elites who started all this, the modern education system, maybe they also did not think that it would, you know, we would be in a situation where we are right now. But then it has reached a certain point where people have been able to manipulate. Corruption was not intentional, maybe, initially, okay?
How would corruption be different back then as opposed to corruption now? Like, how was that definition changed? I'm curious.
So you would hear stories of how, you know, like, say someone who has become a graduate get calls, you know, job offers. They used to get job offers. So they would give their names there. So maybe people called them,
Right.
you know, so those who were qualified. But at the same time, there were also departments where they would not know people. So they would just, you know, recruit people from their family or, you know, like a clan or someone that they knew. So maybe that was out of compulsion because we did not have manpower, educated manpower back then. So that's a different time. Whether it was schemes or a job, many people were unaware, the public were unaware of the schemes that are also available. So someone who is not eligible for a particular scheme may be applying or taking the benefits of that scheme because they were the only ones who knew that that was available. But now information is also becoming public. People are more aware. Or even the NPSC exam, they don't list out, this was something that I mentioned during the public dialogue as well. They don't give out the marks, you know, the marks attained by each candidate as in UPSC. So there is no transparency. Not questioning the competency of all the people who have made it, but if we want to be transparent, the list has to be out, the name with the marks that they have attained, whether it's written or interview, because there's a tendency, there's high possibility to manipulate things when these are not out in public. All you can do is file an RTI for yourself. You don't know the marks of the person next to you or the person who is on the waiting list. You don't even know who is on the waiting list. So it's not just about the revocation that happened. It's not just about requisitioning the post to NPSC, which is supposed to happen. If we're talking about open and fair competition, it has to be equal to all candidates. If you're allotting 40% of the marks to academic weightage, there's going to be some people are going to be at a disadvantage even before they enter the competition. Like I said, disparity within the universities, disparity within the annual and semester system, you know. So they'll have to work on all of those if we want a more egalitarian form of recruiting people.
That is very suspicious. It wouldn't make any sense to not post it unless like they give this very shallow excuse of saying we don't want to shame the rest of the other candidates who didn't score as well.
But I mean,
but this is a competitive exam.
It is a competitive exam. So yeah, the community usually know when the results are out, felicitation, you know,
right,
comes out. So maybe they can pile the RTI marks of that successful candidate and put it up. No, if the government refuses to. But jokes aside, yeah.
Maybe that should be the emphasis of your next protest.
Yeah. That's something we're petitioning for right now. Let's hope they respond positively.
Especially if you're in a cutoff mark, because I know every year it changes, right? Depending on the amount that people score. So if the cutoff mark for that year is 91%, I think it would help candidates who have just lost, who are just below that mark and be like, okay, maybe next year. I see more benefits than cons.
Exactly. That's what we think. But yeah, we want to know their perspective on this as well. So
have you spoken to anyone who's given any reasoning as to why?
No. Some officers, they were very kind to sit down and discuss, you know, and talk about which authority is responsible. But there are also officers that we have gone to, and they'll show us this face. Which group has come again? Kun tu group hui siya aro ito. Kun naka group ay siya aro ito na. And then one officer specifically mentioned that don't bring these petty things to us. These are not petty things, but it's considered petty to them. So yeah. But now that
Yeah, I can't imagine that their job is so demanding to a point where they can disregard a topic like this as petty.
Yeah.
In fact, them saying that it's petty makes them seem petty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have to make noise here, you have to make noise so that the authorities listen to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've shown that very clearly. I think they were shocked at the fact that people would finally stand up to them and the fact that their corruption hasn't gone unnoticed.
It's always the people's power,
Right.
But that's something that the public has failed to identify, the power that each individual has when we come together. You alone, of course, you're powerless, but the government runs because we are there, So the idea that people could come together and that we can still come together for genuine issues, I think that was displayed during the...
How were you able to rally the kind of people that you were able to rally for this protest? Did you talk to certain organizations, anti-corruption, boards beforehand, prior to the protest?
Yeah. So we had the ACOT, what's the full form? Unabated, against corruption and unabated taxation. They were already there. Bisan and ACOT were already into this anti-corruption movement. So we sought their advice. That was how we began. Then we met the CTAN, the Combined Technical Association of Nagaland. They have been a partner, like whenever we had to send an appeal or ask for their solidarity. Now this time we also asked for asked them to support us because they have always been there. So somehow when we got through them, they have been very good in mobilizing. They have around 14, 15 organizations under them. So that was how we rallied. At the same time, there were a lot of people from the universities, whether it's NEHU or Nagaland University. So that's where the mobilization took place. Then there were others. We also approached certain elders.
Was it difficult to even initiate this protest, especially when we're in a society where silence is usually the go-to, you don't really want to ruffle anyone's feathers kind of thing?
Yes. Of course, it's difficult mobilizing people, because you know that you'll be targeted. I know that I'm already targeted. So whether it's in the form of subtle threats or emotional blackmail, you're going to receive that,
Right.
for the rest of your life, I think. But it's a mutual two-way process where people think that you have kept the movement alive, but it's also the movement that has sort of kept us alive, the comrades, the people who have been involved in this. Of course, we're disappointed with certain groups who did not come in support, but...
Why do you think those other groups remain silent? Because I know which ones you're talking about, especially when they were so outspoken with other policy implementations. For example, the CAA, which was something that most Nagas were openly against.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is corruption not a big enough thing to protest against?
I don't know. That's why some of the civil society organizations, I was expecting, say, a little more help from the intellectual fraternity. Maybe, like you said, an issue such as corruption in Nagaland seems petty to scholars who think global, So in the hierarchy of needs, like I said, elites and, people, the masses, in the hierarchy of needs, what is basic to us is not even tertiary for them. So there's this gap. So maybe they think it's not important to come forward. I don't know.
I don't even say not just important, but I feel like when I speak to some intellectuals, they have this grandiose idea of themselves like, I don't want to get my hands dirty with things that are below me. I'm like,
yeah,
I get this, there's that sense of superiority complex that they have.
That is something we will not ignore. That's
Right.
there's this ivory tower, and then the armchair theories. But they would have made a lot of impact. But also given the fact that maybe they need the political elites to be their patrons, seminars, they're going to have big events, they'll have to fund, So that comes from them. So I think that was one of the issue, a discussion that I had with a senior scholar. So I told them that if you let the government fund you, then you lose your autonomy as a scholar organization. But they came up with this argument saying that no, it doesn't mean that just because the government gives us money, we can't speak against them. But you have not been able to speak against them, because you need them, So, yeah.
It does come full circle. Very few are not in the government's pockets.
The network is, everyone is connected in some way or the other. So, yeah.
it's built in such a way where we're so dependent. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship with the government. And it's not really something that we can easily detach from, unfortunately.
That's true. Yeah.
And I was fascinated by one group in particular. I remember NSF, they came and they told you guys to take down your protesting for a little while because it might lead to some misunderstandings.
Yeah.
And I was trying to work in my mind. I'm like, okay, NSF is for the people. You guys are protesting for the people. What possible misunderstanding would there be? In fact, him saying that it's a misunderstanding causes more misunderstandings
Exactly.
for the people that are watching it. It was so kind of absurd to me, where when asked why you guys weren't together, that you guys had your own different goals on how you approach this matter.
Yeah.
But you're protesting 100 meters away from each other, but you're separate. And if you guys, your organizations, can't somehow put aside your petty differences and join together for a common cause like this, what happens if there's a bigger, more compelling issue and we can't fight it because you guys are too busy infighting with each other and you can't agree?
Yeah. We did have a meeting before that, separate protest. One of the conditions was that it has to be under the CTAN and NNQF banner, but that was not agreed upon. Okay, so we left that condition. Okay.
Why was it not agreed upon? You guys started the protest.
Yeah, I know. That was why that was one of the conditions we laid down, but that was a non-negotiable. We also mentioned that at any point, if you start using violence, we're going to separate from you, because that's not our approach. Being non-violent has been our approach from the beginning. So once you start using violence, and to make sure that they don't use students like they did previously. So that was what we mentioned. And then we thought we agreed upon some of these conditions, and then we went back. Okay, so tomorrow we're protesting together. But before we reached home, they decided to not do the protest together. So we went on our own the next day.
Do you have any theories as to why? Because it would seem like not even just NSF, but it would seem like many organizations should have joined the cause.
Yeah, they should have. I also thought, by then many other organizations should have joined, but they did not.
Is it because it didn't fit their agenda?
I don't know, Joe. That's something that I have been trying to figure out. I don't know.
And I know the president said that they had been quietly campaigning and quietly, which I would assume, evidence and trying to maybe get information about this.
Yeah.
He said 6.5 months, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. They have their own history. But,
right. Did they share any of that information with you of what they were doing in those 6.5 months?
Yeah, we did share a little bit of information, but not much information was, discussed at that point. And of course, we also did not decide to go under the NSF umbrella, but under a collective, as a collective. So there was ENSF, and there was NSF, and there was NNQF and CTAN. And then there were also some other student union bodies whose name I would not mention that came to talk to us on behalf of the other side, keeping in mind the colleges, where the students might suffer if the teachers are taken out, all those. So of course we were also not asking for their immediate termination, but we knew where they stood when they come to talk to us,
Were you open to negotiating with them, or was it just you had already decided what your answers were prior to it and there was just no room for...
No, but actually, you see, it is based on the mode of recruitment, right to equal opportunity.
Right.
So when you negotiate, the whole thing falls apart. So negotiation was not possible.
What is this court case against you?
In 2018, we came, NNQF Nagaland NET Qualified Forum came together regarding a non-advertisement issue. 68 posts were created and they were not being advertised. So that was how Nagaland NET Qualified Forum came together. A few of us, we came together demanding for the advertisement of this post. So for that advertisement to take place, we made a lot of noise, whether it was national level or here. But that was the main issue where Nagaland NET Qualified Forum came together. Now in our meetings, what was also decided was to challenge the backdoor appointments. They don't like to use this word backdoor, but for us it's backdoor because it was not through the NPSC, CESE. We had met with Accord and Pisan. They had already challenged these backdoor appointments in the court. They have taken a lot of departments together, but the case was dismissed because they had taken too many departments together, and none of their petitioners were MA NET qualified. So those were the technicalities on which the case was dismissed. So this was handed down to us. We also wanted to take it up. So we challenged this backdoor appointments, 208 posts under the Higher Education Department in 2019. Now, again, this case was dismissed in 2022, not on the basis of the merit of the case, but again, based on technicalities, saying that you cannot just challenge all the subjects. It has to be subject specific. So if you want to challenge sociology subject backdoor appointment, you need to have a petitioner who is sociology MA NET qualified. Similarly, for political science, you'll have to have a petitioner who is political science MA NET. So 2022, now we filed for unqualified but backdoor appointments, and 2023, qualified but backdoor appointments. So we had categorized them and subject specific.
And how many cases were that separately?
So all of this together, it comes to, as per the court, 115. So while this was already in court, they had processed for their regularization, the absorption. So this is also questionable because you are also challenging the court when it's already in court. It has not been given any judgment. They had started the regularization. We had made several appeals. We had even met with the minister. We made appeals to the government after the notification was out, etc. But it continued. What we also learned is that they use, as the lawyers tell you, they use this delay tactics. So they'll prolong it as much as possible. Yeah.
And it just shows deep incompetency of the government. For the fact that it passed, it got vetted through everyone for it to be revoked at the last moment. What are they doing? What is sort of the mentality of the people over there?
I know. This was really, I don't know, it was a what do you call, a roller coaster ride since it began, no? They'll give out say an information, they will contradict themselves in the next. The requisition is still pending. So we had given a deadline of May 21, sorry. So we visited the Secretariat again on May 22 to ask what happened. So the High Power Committee had made some recommendations, but the contents are not known to us, neither the public. So we had this public dialogue on June 7, where we invited them to also come and clarify, the Higher Education Department as well as the minister in charge. But of course, they did not come for the talk. But then the recent public statement that they made was that the proposal for the post creation of 129 assistant professor posts, that was now being carried forward. But then how is it being carried forward, that we don't know.
It seems like a forceful hand is needed, because every single time that they're put to the fire or they're asked these type of questions, they give like a politician's answer. It's very vague. It's very like beat around the bush.
Yeah.
And they gaslight us into thinking that we're the crazy ones for trying to question them.
Yeah, I think that's the right word, gaslight. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it seems like whatever paperwork we put on them, like you're literally giving it to the devil's hand at this point. And you just said it. You don't know what's happening there.
Yeah,
you don't know
exactly.
who's even looking at it.
Yeah.
Is it just sitting on a table somewhere, just waiting for them to just keep delaying over and over and over again? Are you guys just being taken for a ride?
Yeah, that's what we feel right now. But we have given them, we had sent an ultimatum for July 12th.
July 12th.
To at least, give out information on what is being carried out.
I mean, in their minds, if I was the manipulator, I would do what's called like the breadcrumb tactic.
Yeah.
Slowly drip feed you guys a little bit of information, push you guys to give me another ultimatum for the next month, and then give just a little bit of information. And this is what's going to carry on for 5-6 years before any resolution.
That's exactly what they're doing. It's a half-won battle, You can revoke it, but then if those posts were not requisitioned, then you also have this at the back of your mind, like people in authority, whether it's them or us, there is the possibility to manipulate it again. You have revoked it, but you can always sort of absorb the people that you want or you think needs to be absorbed, again. So unless some requisition takes place, we cannot fully celebrate the revocation as a victory.
Were there any government officials who privately supported you guys, but they weren't able to do it publicly?
Yeah, we do have support of people.
But specifically in the government?
Yeah.
Would you say there were some surprising ones?
Yeah, maybe some. But the problem is you can't even say these things because even the government officers will get targeted. What happened was prior to, say, a lot of our members who were active, in the Nagaland NET Qualified Forum, maybe they were not coming with us to the offices or anything, but they would like give us money for your transport or for tea. And the fact that we are running against a court case, we were also trying to fund. So for accountability purpose, we would put up their names, this person gave this much, so that we keep some transparency in terms of the money that comes. Somehow they're targeted again, they get calls from, I don't know, authorities or people who have been active, have been summoned by authorities, so it becomes very difficult. So maybe for some of us right now, very active, you get through, you're going to be targeted. So yeah.
Have you like had very serious threats made against you?
No, not really. Surprisingly, I was not the one. There were other people, but I was not the one.
Mishenlo is probably on that list. He's probably number one, right?
That's what he says.
Yeah. That's what he claims. Is that
what? Yeah. Maybe because he's a male. I don't know. But of course, you get subtle threats like you're never going to get a government job if you continue. Emotional blackmail in the sense, people get into the fact that they're in depression or they might commit suicide. But then, what do you think? Many of us are unemployed. We haven't had some of them have not got the opportunity to give the exams. We can say the same thing, You're worried about, of course, we understand, you have a family, but many of us have not been able to start a family also because we have not had the opportunity to give the exam, and some people are unemployed. So, if we have to go on this compassionate grounds, we can compete. Therefore, there has to be rules for justice to prevail. There has to be rules, irrespective of your conditions.
Right. Well, I remember one of the signs that you guys held up. It was like, what, meritocracy is dead?
Yeah. We had a funeral as well.
Oh, you had a funeral.
We brought the coffin, no? We had a funeral service. Yeah.
Wow. Prior to this, did you have other cases of corruption?
No, I never thought, I would be involved in this, but regarding when the issue of non-advertisement came up, we got into this and somehow things just unfolded, I did not have any experience prior to this.
Why do you think they made you the forefront?
I don't know about that.
Really?
I was there since the beginning, and somehow some people get married, they have other priorities. Some people crack the exams, they get it. I was the only one I was left behind, maybe so.
We have no one else.
I don't know why I am. Yeah. But of course, there are a lot of people, a lot of comrades who have silently working with me.